Whipple Family Misadventures Book 1. Welcome to the Parents of an Alien Hedgehog Club, Chapter 16. Before Shadow had turned up in their lives, Wade had been trying to remove what remained of the old faded wallpaper in the living room. He had gotten close to 90% of it off, but then he had been promptly distracted by the fact that there were now 2 kids in his home that needed him. The last little bit left had been mocking him every time he walked by. A swift reminder that it was a project he hadn't finished. However, now that things were slightly calmer, he was determined to get it done. As soon as he finished lunch, he was working on it, reduced to sitting on the floor to remove the last little bit near the floorboards, thinking about how he could paint the living room or do something else exciting in decorating when he noticed something. The house looked so different from this angle. He was so used to seeing it from his own height, but he had never seen it from down here, how both Shadow and Silver would see it. And it was wild. Neither of them were tall enough to look out the windows. The doorknobs were above their heads. The dining room, chairs, and couch were large enough that they had to boost themselves up instead of just sitting naturally. Stunned, Wade got up and walked into the kitchen and sat back down in there and took another look around. Here, the countertops were above their heads. They could only reach the lower part of the refrigerator. So much of the kitchen was out of their reach. Sure, Silver could float up or either one of them could climb up onto the counters, but still. So much of the house, which obviously had been built for humans, was inaccessible to his kids. It had never occurred to him how much either of them might struggle with that.
What are you doing?
Wade nearly jumped and looked to see Shadow behind him looking at him curiously.
Nothing. What's up?
Do you think Sonic could come over for a little bit?
Actually, probably not. I have to run and check on someone, and then I need to go to the store after that.
He frowned as he wasn't sure if he could get away with bringing the 2 of them with him, or if he could actually leave them here. Maybe it was a bad decision, but he really wanted to trust them and believe they would behave when he wasn't there. Shadow tugged absent-mindedly on one of his gloves.
I can't do it again.
What?
What I did when I was upset, that blast, I tried to do it again and I couldn't.
Wade tried not to grimace thinking about that. It wasn't much of a shock that Shadow had abilities that he had not yet unlocked. It seemed to be a requirement of being an alien hedgehog.
Oh, well, I'd really prefer that you do not try that again in the house, because I like my furniture. So maybe outside when it's warmer?
Shadow looked towards the window at the snowflakes that were sporadically coming down.
Is it always going to snow?
This is Montana, but no, not always. It's early March now. Next month it will start warming up.
He had more to say about that thought, but noticed how Shadow was leaning hard, putting almost all of his weight onto his right foot.
Is your foot bothering you?
When Shadow didn't answer, Wade frowned sympathetically.
I really wish you'd tell me so that I can help you, Shadow.
I broke my ankle a long time ago, and sometimes it still bothers me, but I don't want anyone doing anything to it. I'm not doing any tests.
Shadow said it as he gestured to his left ankle. That was incredibly difficult to hear.
Does it bother you a lot?
Shadow shook his head.
Okay, we can talk about it later. Where's Silver?
Shadow gestured with his elbow back towards the bedrooms. Heading in that direction with Shadow trailing behind him, Wade found Silver lying on the carpet in their room, surrounded by Legos as he was attempting to build something.
Hey Silver, I'm going to run some errands. If I leave you 2 here alone, will you both be good and not fight, or am I willing to come home to the house in shambles?
Jumping to his feet, Silver said eagerly.
Is it?
Beside him, Shadow nodded. Stopping, Wade shot him a confused look.
Yes to the house being in shambles?
Oh, no. We'll be good.
There was doubt. a massive amount of doubt, but Wade also needed to know for sure. Wade had left them home alone individually, and nothing horrible had happened to either of them. Not to mention, he was almost halfway through the 3 weeks of vacation time and would be going back to work soon. Either the two of them would be staying home alone while he was at work, or he'd have to get someone to watch them, and he needed to know if he could trust them alone or not.
Okay, no using the stove or oven. We just had lunch. You don't need any snacks. I shouldn't be gone for more than 2 hours. What's the rule about opening the door when I'm not here?
Only for Tom and Maddie.
Good, and I'm going to get a camera for the porch today, and actually...
He went back to the living room, picked up 2 pieces of paper from his desk before returning and handing each of them one.
I want you both to work on this and finish them before I get back.
The night before, he had gone online and found dozens of worksheets in all kinds of subjects, but the first skill they needed to be able to do was read. The ones he had just handed over involved tracing letters and then copying several times.
Why do we have to do this?
Remember how excited you were about playing video games?
That made the gray hedgehog perk up. Since Sonic had introduced him to both Fortnite and Minecraft, Silver hadn't stopped talking about it, especially since now he wanted those games to play. Which meant either Wade would have to download them into his computer and let the kids use his own computer, which he was slightly reluctant to do, or get another computer just for that purpose. He still hadn't made a decision.
Well, if you want to have a much easier time playing video games, you gotta be able to read. It's not that hard. Just both of you finish the pages before I get back.
Little did they know, Wade had plans to start easing them into learning by working on this for a few minutes each day, and slowly increasing until it was natural for them to spend a few hours on it. He almost said that if the two of them behaved while he was gone, then he would allow them to have their friend over, but realized that was an obvious bribe. He didn't want to set a standard for having to bribe them into good behavior all the time. No, he would just come back and see what happened and make a decision then. Hopefully, nothing would go wrong. Wade really wanted to be able to leave his kids home for short periods of time and not have to watch them every second of the day. There was something about the memory care nursing home that always made Wade uneasy. He was fully aware that these places needed to be secure because it would have been very easy for a dementia patient to wander off, but it was still off-putting how secure this place was. He did appreciate how much they tried to make it not seem like a prison in lockdown. Wade knocked twice on the door leading to the apartment and opened it.
Hello?
Come in.
He entered the room to find his mother standing in her living room. She was facing the window and turned to look at him.
Oh, I know you.
Yes, Wendy, I'm Wade.
Her face brightened.
That's my son's name.
She glanced back out the window.
He should be home from school soon. I've been watching for the bus.
Wade smiled, even though it was always a bit painful that his own mother didn't recognize him. Every time he came to visit her, it was a bit worse.
How have you been?
I'm all right. I'm a bit worried about my son. His father's getting remarried, and he took it hard. He didn't want to go to the wedding. His father blamed me, said I poisoned his son against him.
He's probably just upset that his dad only calls him a few times a year and feels like he doesn't want or care about him anymore.
Wendy blinked and Wade quickly looked away.
Or so I've heard.
She frowned thoughtfully.
I'll have to ask him about that, but what about you? How have you been?
I'm doing okay. I'm actually a dad now. I'm adopting 2 boys.
He told her, smiling. He wanted so much to tell her about them, how they were technically her grandsons. But if she couldn't remember that he was an adult, then she won't remember them or that they are alien hedgehogs. The grin that came over her face was infectious.
That's wonderful. You and your wife must be so happy.
She started to move past him to the kitchen.
Would you like some tea?
Wade sat down on the couch.
Yes, please. And no, wife. It's just me. I never thought I would be a dad. Babies and diapers and getting up every 2 hours with the baby just sounded awful and not something I could handle on my own. But then these 2 kids fell into my life and they're older, so I don't have to deal with any of that, and it's been the best thing that's ever happened to me. It's hard sometimes, but I love it. So much more than I thought I would.
When Wendy came back carrying his cup of tea, she was still smiling.
A single dad, how nice, you know? I was a single mother.
Oh, really? Was it difficult?
Wade said, hoping his voice sounded surprised enough as he took the cup of tea from her. He didn't really care for tea, but she always offered it and he always took it anyway. Wendy didn't answer until she had fetched her own cup and sat down across from him in her big easy chair.
It was very difficult sometimes.
Only by extreme effort did Wade manage not to look taken aback.
Oh, how so?
He asked. He knew that children were never easy and he obviously had not been an exception. But he also had never heard of his mother express anything about her life being difficult.
Well, it was more the fact that my son's father wasn't really involved. He was when my son was very young. But then after we broke up, my ex found himself a prettier and younger girlfriend and moved out of state. That was a hard conversation for Wade.
Nodding slowly, Wade remembered when he was 8. He had come home from school and she sat him down and explained that he wasn't going to see his father much anymore. It had been confusing. He was already used to the fact that his parents didn't live together, that he sometimes spent days or weeks over at his father's house. But as she explained, his father had moved across the country and wouldn't be coming back. Before she was even finished telling him, he had been crying. While Wade had spoken to him on the phone after that, it had been the last time he had physically seen his father.
I could see why that would have been difficult.
He finally said, managing to keep his voice level. Wendy sipped her tea.
And then, of course, the usual. Having to do everything yourself is also hard. Sometimes it doesn't feel like there's enough hours in the day.
She shook her head.
But enough about me. How long have you been a dad?
That long, I'm still trying to figure it out. It's a learning curve. Like when I say don't kick your brother at the table, I mean don't kick your brother at all. But they hear kick your brother somewhere else.
Wendy laughed at that. She didn't have a delicate laugh. It sounded like a horse, but it was the sound of his childhood to Wade. To him, it had always been a signal that everything would be okay, as long as his mother was laughing.
How old are they?
10 and 11. Things haven't been that easy for either of them. The 2 of them have gone through a lot and are having a bit of trouble adjusting. The older one more so than the younger one. But I hope they both settle in soon.
He wanted to tell her more about how both Silver and Shadow were still nervous to be brought into public with him, and that he hoped in time it would become second nature, that neither of them would be scared or worried about what other humans might think or react. There was so much he wanted to tell her, and yet he didn't know what she would remember or if she might go around telling the caregivers here that he had dangerous aliens with him.
I never thought I would need children to complete my life, but now I can't imagine living without either of my kids.
Wade said slowly. He didn't feel like he was able to fully tell her everything, but he just really wanted her to hear it, just once. He was aware she didn't know who he actually was, but all the same know that he was doing really well. He had kids now, and everything was finally starting to go well for him. After he finished visiting with his mother, Wade went straight to the store. If there was one thing he was learning, when you adopt kids, there's always more stuff they needed, no matter how often he went shopping. Like a car seat for Shadow, toothbrushes for both of them, a can of teal paint for the living room, and the store's entire supply of single-step stools, and then a mini stamp ladder before he finally put in an order for a front door camera. When that was finally done, he loaded his purchases into his car and drove home. He was so worried about what he would find when he got there. He really wanted to believe Shadow and Silver would behave when he wasn't physically there, but he also remembered the absolute shock when only last week he had come home to the 2 of them viciously fighting each other. From the outside, the house looked fine. No damage that he could see. No fire or loud noises coming from inside. As soon as he pulled into the garage and shut off the car, Wade all but bounded into the house, leaving his purchases in the car.
Guys?
He called out, hoping for the best but also preparing for the absolute worst.
Hey, Dad.
Silver chirped from where he was sitting at the table. Wade stopped dead at the end of the hallway, looked around. Everything was fine, left exactly where he had left it. Nothing out of place. Even more so, the house was quiet. A calmness that it usually didn't have.
Where's Shadow?
What is it?
When Wade looked behind him, he saw the darker hedgehog coming out of their bedroom, wrapped in a blanket like a cloak. The relief that washed over Wade was massive. He had been gone for nearly 2 hours and nothing horrible had happened. This was going to work out.
Oh, nothing. But have you both finished your worksheets?
He said, unable to stop the grin that came to his face. As soon as he got positive affirmation from both of them, Wade sat down at the table, almost overcome with joy at how comforting this was. It made his life so much easier when everything worked out.
You're both the best. I'm so proud of you guys.
Those words made Silver beam, his little tail wagging furiously, but Shadow only frowned.
You're proud of us? Because we did what you asked?
Wade turned his smile towards him.
Sure am, buddy.
But it's the bare minimum.
Shadow's expression of pure bewilderment almost was comical.
I could still be proud. You guys still want to have Sonic over for a few hours?
That got their attention and fast.
Yes!
Silver yelled, nearly falling out of his chair before he caught himself. Remembering that they had no way to contact Sonic without his help, Wade took out his phone, unlocked it, and handed it to Shadow, who was closest.
Call Tom and ask to speak to Sonic.
He advised. The darker hedgehog looked pale, but slowly did as he said.
Dad, do you think maybe Shadow or I could get cell phones?
No, definitely not.
Why not? They're really cool and you can do a lot of stuff on them, like play games and look up stuff.
I know that, but cell phones are also expensive and delicate. Also, you're 10 and he's 11, and neither of you need a phone.
Wade told him as he stood up and put both of their finished worksheets back onto his desk.
You'd be able to call us anytime.
That's an argument for me to get a landline, not you both getting cell phones. Besides, I don't think either of you are responsible enough to take care of one.
Yes, we are.
Wade had to actively work not to roll his eyes.
Where's your water bottle? Exactly. Besides, you have lots of trouble because you can't read. Maybe when you can and are a little older. Now, how about you go find your water bottle? It's probably blinking away.
Even though Wade was very aware of Sonic's extreme speed, it still surprised him sometimes. Like how Shadow finished the phone call, handed the phone back to him, and then there was a knock on the door less than 30 seconds later.
We need to show Shadow Minecraft.
Silver said as soon as he opened the door. The blue hedgehog was carrying a shoebox and a shopping bag with other stuff.
Actually, no. First, we need to finish the project. I tried to do it myself, but I couldn't make it alone. But I think with the three of us, we can do it.
What are you guys making?
Well, you know Caitlin?
Of course I know Caitlin. She's been working at the receptionist for the police station for almost 4 years. What about her?
Well, she has a sister who has a friend whose cousin's next door neighbor lives in this big house in Great Falls, and sometimes there.
No, you're telling it wrong. Let me say it. Kathleen has a sister who has a roommate who has a friend whose cousin.
I was saying it right.
Shadow frowned.
I'm not fully sure where this is going, but I do remember hearing there was a roommate.
Silver crossed his arms.
It wasn't the roommate who had the cousin, it was her sister.
If it was her sister, that would be Kathleen's cousin as well.
Oh, then maybe it was.
Okay, I'm sorry I asked. You guys just go ahead and work on whatever it is you're making, and show me when you're done. I'll be out in the garage if you need me.
Leaving the three hedgehogs in the living room, Wade went back to the garage and started sorting out his purchases and what needed to be brought into the house and what needed to stay out here. The car seat was definitely staying. Shadow would be less than thrilled when he found out about it. But that didn't matter. Alien hedgehogs or not, Wade had seen too many car accidents and was not letting either one of them get hurt in his care. It took him almost 10 minutes to set it up, and he was walking back into the house when he heard the most terrifying words he could ever imagine coming from the living room.
Okay, now just hold it down so it won't explode.
Instantly, Wade was in motion, sprinting the last few steps.
Did you just say explode? What on earth are you guys making?
All three hedgehogs were hunched around something, all holding something in that box down, and all looked deeply confused at his reaction, like they thought he was overreacting.
It's not that kind of explosion.
What are the ideas there?
It's okay.
No, it is not okay. You guys cannot be making that in my living room.
But it's.
Shadow started, but he never got to finish that statement, as one of them had obviously let go of something, and it released a massive cloud of extremely colorful glitter that shot up into the air and slowly floated down to settle over everything. Wade blew out a very long sigh as he came to the realization that they had been attempting to build a glitter bomb in his living room.